Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to all of our participants joining us in this new series of ELT talks. And following the first ELT week organised by the British Council Argentina in March 2023, which I believe many of you attended, and it's wonderful to see so many places coming up in the chat. I can see hello from people in Buenos Aires, Mar del Plata, Córdoba, Corrientes, somebody from La Rioja, somebody from Uruguay. I've even seen someone from Illinois, I think, in the United States, Chile, right from, I can see, oh, Susan Hilliard's joined us. That's ELT royalty we've got in the room. That's fantastic. So I would like to start off by saying, my name is Rob Chatfield. I'm the country director of the British Council in Argentina. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the first ELT talk of 2023-24, which is called Are We Learning? And it's a practical exploration of assessment in ELT. And I'd like to thank the Teaching Touch, who are wonderful friends on social media, Bello and G, our teachers of English with lots of experience. And during the pandemic, they decided to create an amazing Instagram page, which has thousands and thousands of followers. And you'll find great content there for teachers. And we're going to share the link there to their Instagram, and don't forget to follow them. They're wonderful teachers and so full of energy. We would also like to thank Twinkle Argentina for supporting our activities once again. And we have good news for those of you joining us today. With the code ELT Talks 1, and we're going to share that in the chat, don't worry, that's capitals ELT Talks 1. You'll be able to access 2 weeks of premium account for free, with access to great resources for the classroom. So find the link in the comments section. Don't miss the opportunity. It's free, and everyone likes something that's free, don't they, particularly these days. So as well as our partners, our goal is to continue providing teachers of English with useful insights, tools and resources they can put into practice in the classrooms. And today we're launching a new series of ELT talks, and we will have renowned ELT experts discussing different subjects that are relevant for English language teaching today. The first session features our friends Claudia Rey and Gustavo Gonzalez. And so Claudia and Gustavo, thank you so much for joining us. Claudia is a Lenguas Vivas graduate with vast experience as a teacher and teacher trainer. Claudia is a NILE, which is the Norwich Institute for Language Education affiliate trainer, and the designer and course leader of NILE's Teaching Young Learners online course. And she will present on formative assessment, its differences with summative assessments, and tips for effective practices. Gustavo Gonzalez graduated as a teacher of English at ISFD number 5 in Pergamino. I went to Pergamino last year. It was an interesting bus journey. He holds a postgraduate degree from UBA, National University of Buenos Aires, and he also holds a postgraduate diploma in education and new technologies from Flaxo, which is, for those of you who don't know, the Facultad Latinoamericana de Ciencias Sociales, and a diploma in neurosciences for educators, which is Asociación Educar and UBA. He has been in the ELT field since 1993, working as a teacher, school coordinator, teacher trainer, and presenter, and we'll be talking about assessment from a practical point of view. So before I give the floor to our amazing speakers, let me remind you of our house rules. You're welcome, and I encourage you to share your comments and suggestions and questions. Please make sure that you maintain respectful and positive communication. Remember not to share any personal or sensitive information, and please note that harmful, unpleasant or inappropriate comments will not be tolerated. We don't want any of that. It's a lovely Wednesday evening, so let's enjoy ourselves. So without further ado, let's welcome Claudia Rey. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see so many people from so many different places, and I am delighted to be here with my partners in crime. First one, Gustavo, with whom we will be trying to share some ideas. And we met early today, and we decided that there are some things that will just happen, and we might agree or disagree or add things. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a real conversation, a real talk. And thank you to our other partners in crime, Robert, Lily, Diego, Vicky, everybody who's behind the scenes. It's great to be able to do this with so many friends on stage and behind the scenes. So let's get started with the title. And I hope you found it intriguing or maybe interesting this waiter, please tell the chef this soup is delicious. And this title, the title of my bit, is inspired by some words that I heard Professor Gavin Brown say in one of the lectures on assessment that he did for the Commonwealth Educational Trust. And I think that this title encompasses not only the academic part that we will try to do, the informational part, but we will also try to make it sound like something that we can use in the classroom every day, that we can relate to. And the general topic of this talk is a question: are we learning? And it's just a practical exploration of assessment. It's an initial exploration, and we hope that this is something that inspires you to learn more, to think about it, to try new things. And Lily, as I said, is one of my partners in crime, and she's going to help me with the slideshow so that I can focus more on the chat box, because we would like this to be super interactive. So your replies, your comments, your questions are part of this collaborative effort. In this part of the presentation, as I said before, I'm going to share some ideas now. Gustavo is also going to share some ideas right after me. And then there will be time for a conversation that both of us will hold with all of you that are there. I would like to start off with a question. And this is not for you to Google, and you do not necessarily need to give an academic definition. My question is simply, what is assessment? How do you define assessment? What does assessment mean to you? So your replies, yes, hi everybody. We can still see a lot of comments, things that are coming in from the people that are joining us. Okay, we have the first definition. It's a process. Thank you, Graciela. Now we have more information. A process where stakeholders can get insight on students' learning progress. Now we're daily evaluation. Now we're getting a lot of different definitions. They are all connected, aren't they? I'm sure that you're following the chat box too. Construction of students' knowledge. Thank you, Matteo. Any other definitions? Reflexive way, process that can be measured. And these are all great definitions. This is actually my way to do a little bit of formative assessment, because what I'm trying to do now is to see how much you already know about this, and maybe what you have in mind and how we can take a step further. A reflection. This is a word that has come up several times. All fantastic definitions. Thank you for your work so far. Let's take a look at the next slide, in which I have chosen a definition which is not better than any of the definitions that you have shared with us. It's just a definition that I like because I feel it works well, not only for academic matters, but also for other things, including the soup that we mentioned in the title. Feedback. Thank you, Daniela, for saying that. And that's one of the words in this definition. So the wide variety of methods or tools that educators use to evaluate, measure, and document the academic readiness, learning progress, skill acquisition, or educational needs of students. This is a definition from the Glossary for Education Reform. And as I said, it's not better than any of the definitions that you gave before. It's just a working definition. And the next step is for me to ask you to highlight some of these words. what are the words in this definition that resonate with you, or words that you were not expecting to see, or maybe words that you didn't think about, but now that they are in the definition, you say, ah, I should have said that. I should have included that. And I can see 3 answers already. Variety is one that has come up several times. Educational needs or needs, readiness, readiness, educational needs. It looks like those are your favorite words. Variety is one that has come up several times. Skills, learning progress, measure. Great. I always like to do this kind of activity to find the key words in a definition or in a phrase, because it shows where we come from. We have all chosen different keywords because it all depends on where we stand. It depends on our background. It depends on our experience. So this is also part of formative assessment. In the next slide, you will see some of the words that I personally chose. These resonate with me because, well, in the first place, wide variety reminds me of the huge range of methods and tools that we can use to evaluate or to assess. And I think that this is a very important starting point. I have also highlighted, Susanna says, variety is the key. I agree that this is one of the key words because there's such a wide range that we can and should use. Another word that I have highlighted is document, because it's not only collecting the information, getting it, but it's also, I think, organizing it so that we can use it. Several people mentioned readiness, progress. Some of you also mentioned skill. I want to also highlight, exactly, yes, Carolina, that's the one that I also want to highlight. It's all about the needs of students, the needs of our learners. So how does this connect to the waiter, the soup, and cooking? Susan, this one is for you. Susan is not only part of the royalty, she's also probably the best cook I've ever met. And I think that she will agree with me when we move on to the next slide. And we look at first assessment for summative purposes. This is also known as assessment of learning. And this is what happens when a customer says, waiter, please tell the chef that this soup is delicious. It's something that happens at the end of a process. The soup is there. It has already been served. The customer is tasting it, or maybe the customer has already finished it. The customer says, ooh, this soup is delicious. Assessment for summative purposes is assessment that we do to determine the value or the quality of something. In this case, the soup. It could be fluency in oral skills. It could be writing skills. It could be listening skills. It's the final decision on something. It's used to decide how good something was and if it met the learning objective. I'm going to use the term learning objective. It's not exactly the same as aim or outcome, but I'm going to be using them one after the other, because as I said, it's not technically the same thing, but we know what we mean. An assessment for summative purposes is used to make decisions about the effectiveness of something. It may be the effectiveness of teaching, learning, or the effectiveness of that soup for future reference. Maybe the restaurant owner will make a decision about that amazing chef who has made that soup. It could be a raise in salary. If the summative assessment had been, ooh, waiter, take this back to the kitchen, I can't have this soup, the restaurant owner might decide to dismiss that chef. It's still a decision, but it's about future reference. Assessment for summative purposes occurs at the end of a process. And it's only done a few times in the case of academic matters, a few times during the school year. If we are back in a restaurant situation, it's done at the end of the process when the customer says, well done, or I'm not coming back here. But I want to focus more on formative assessment, which is in our next slide. And formative assessment is not about the soup being served and tasted. So let's move on to the next slide, the one that is on formative. Thank you. This one is on assessment for formative purposes. It's also known as assessment for learning. And this kind of assessment is happening while we make the soup. It happens because we want to provide feedback and guidance for the purpose of improvement. It happens because we want to find out what needs to be changed to achieve the objective, the learning objective or the objective of making an amazing soup. It's the kind of assessment that we do to make decisions during the process. In the case of academic settings, it's day by day, lesson by lesson. In the case of making the soup, it's the process that takes place while cooking it, tasting, making decisions about what should go in, a little bit more seasoning. So it happens before the end, and it should be done as often as possible. So in the next slide, we have the two situations compared. This is just a short review of what we have been looking at. Assessment for formative purposes while we're making the soup to make sure that we can make improvement, that it can taste better, that it will be a fantastic soup. And the assessment for summative purposes right at the end, in which we are going to just say, it was amazing, it was fantastic, I want to come back, or this one was not good enough, I'm never coming back. So I would like to invite you now to use this analogy for assessment in academic matters, in the ELT world where we teach. What do you see as assessment for formative purposes and assessment for summative purposes? How does that relate to our soup? Would you like to use the chat box to let me know what you think about this? How does this analogy work? When do we do assessment for formative purposes? When do we do assessment for summative purposes? And which one should we be doing more of? Okay, I'm just looking at the chat box to see if there are any new replies. There we are. Portfolios, process writing, that's for formative assessment. Great. All year long, formative purposes. Term exams, that's a summative assessment. Oh, Kaya says we should be doing much more formative assessment for sure. Kayo, can I put you on the spot? I think that you can either use the microphone if you want, or use the chat box as you have been doing. Why do you say that you think that we should be doing more of that? Please feel free to use the mic. I think that Vicky can allow you to use the microphone if you prefer that, or if you want to reply in the chat box why you think that we should be doing more of that. And this is an open question too. Other people may want to jump in. When we want, okay, formative assessment, yes. Term exams are summative assessment. There are a lot of things coming in. Finding it, and I really appreciate all this participation for improvement. That's that's one of the key words. Visual thinking routines. Oh, okay. Can you clarify that? Exit ticket. Those are different ways of doing it, or different tools. Formative assessments, journals, writing process, oral activities on different topics. Yes, okay. We should do both, but in different moments and for different reasons. Right, and that's why we said that both exist and both have a place to better engage in our students' progress. Great, thank you. I would like to spend a couple more minutes talking about formative assessment, and then Gustavo will take over with some other ideas. Back to the this idea of formative assessment, brainstorming, that's a great tool for formative assessment. My question now is, what tools can we use for formative assessment? What tools do you use in your classes for formative assessment? And I want to bring in another important element or ingredient, maybe, since we're talking about soup, which is the idea of giving feedback. Yes, rubrics can be used both. Thank you, Michaela. Rubrics can be used both for formative and summative assessment. Absolutely. Let's take a look at the next slide. Project-based learning. That's another great tool. Rubrics, yes, rubrics keep coming up, and we can actually use them for summative purposes or for formative purposes. So now we have a list of assessment tools. I have only used two, which are particularly good for formative assessment or assessment for formative purposes, or we sometimes say formative assessment for short, although it's not technically correct, but we know what we mean. Two tools that I have mentioned there, portfolio and brainstorming activities. But I would like you to give me some more. Games, yes. Projects on different topics, quizzes, games, plays, role plays. These are all the things Ryu is saying in the chat box. Peer feedback, group feedback. I think that there's no better let's move on to that. Thanks for that comment. Let's move on to that. Digital tools, absolutely. Gamification, so many tools we can use for formative assessment or assessment for formative purposes. However, without feedback, all of those tools are not really effective and are not really for formative purposes. Because remember we said that the purpose of formative assessment is improvement. As the cook, as the chef is making that soup, what can he or she do to make sure that the soup gets better and better? Feedback is the main concept that we need to put together with all of those tools that you have mentioned. I am using here there are some great definitions of feedback. I am using one that I feel is particularly useful because it's so short and so simple. It's information about how we are doing so that we can reach the goal. So what is effective feedback? How do we give effective feedback? And Grant Wiggins is very specific when he says, this is feedback, information about how we're doing. What feedback is not is advice or praise. So in my next slide, you will see 7 keys to effective feedback. These are the ones that Wiggins also mentions. On the left column, you can see many of the things that you said and maybe a couple of new ones. And on the right column, and I'm just about to finish with my little part, 7 keys to effective feedback. Feedback should be timely, it should be ongoing, it should be actionable, user-friendly, it has to be in terms that our students understand, it should be consistent, tangible, transparent, and goal-referenced. And it's not easy to give effective feedback because these are all the things that we need to take into account so that we can give feedback that is useful for our learners to improve. So I think I'm going to stop here because Gustavo has some other ideas to share. Later on, we will come back to the takeaways and the questions. Gustavo, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much indeed. Claudia, just before we give the floor to Gustavo, I just want to remind everybody of our remote teaching resources for teachers. And this week we published a very interesting piece on assessment, and you'll find the links in the chat. So let's welcome now, he's been sitting here very patiently, but thank you, Claudia, for finishing on time. That's the mark of an excellent teacher trainer. Not only was it a very interesting presentation, you kept to time. That's beautiful. So remember, we got questions at the end. We got 10 minutes for questions at the end. So please use the Q&A function that's at the bottom of the screen. Ask us your questions and we'll see how many we can get in. But now it's over to Gustavo. Gustavo, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here. For me, it's a pleasure, guys, to be sharing this moment with you and with you, Claudia, as sharing this conversation on assessments. So I'm going to start sharing my screen with you guys, right? And I will be inviting you to have a very, very practical session, because my session is called A Quick Practical View on Assessments. And I'm going to be encouraging you to use the chat box. Let me open the chat so I can see your comments, right? Because we will be interacting a lot. So I'm going to start by inviting you to watch a very short video clip, and something that you will see on the video is this screenshot. Based on what Claudia has just said, does it look like a kind of assessment or testing? What do you think? Can I read your thoughts? Testing, Silvana. Yeah, testing. Okay, of course, it's 100% testing. Does this image sound familiar to you? Have you ever been in a situation like that? Have your students been in a situation like that? Yes, we all have. So I'm going to invite you to watch this very short clip, right? And then I'm going to invite you to share your thoughts afterwards. Okay, let's get started.
1 minute, 1 minute, please. Time, thank you. Could you all please put down your pens and bring your papers to the front of the room? Thank you. Well done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
you.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're too late. Gave you plenty of warnings about time. You failed. Sorry.
Excuse me, do you know who I am?
I have absolutely no idea.
Good.
Okay, guys, so here we are. So what are your thoughts about the situation of this? Yeah, surprise and shocking, right? Way to go. Wow, Stefan, yes, I can see your comments. Yeah, but let's focus not on this ad per se, but on what happened at that situation. All school, yeah, loved it. Well, the student was outsmarting the teacher, I would say. Moral of the story, learn your student's name, Jimena. I couldn't agree more with you exactly, because it's very important that we need to create safe learning spaces when we are testing our students. And of course, we talk about, you said about this idea of not being assessment, but we still need to test our students somehow, right? Of course, I am for assessment, for learning, but I think we need to keep including assessment of learning, which is somehow reflected on exams like that. Okay, so let's see. What is what you don't see me, they say. I don't know. What's going on? Is there anything wrong? Okay, can you see me now? Okay. No,
It's all working good, Gustavo. It's just
no.
that it's till the end of the video, but we're going to the next slide now.
The black screen was the end of the video, right? Now we're back on the presentation. So now tell me one word that you can associate or that you can relate to this testing situation. Just give me one word. Let's brainstorm together how this video clip made you feel. Stressful, impersonal, traditional, lack of interest, distant, nervous. Okay. Awful, tradition, cold. So I think that one of the best ways that we need to start incorporating to our teaching is to make a relevant, meaningful, and true connection with our students by learning their names. Something as simple as that. I mean, we need to make our students feel comfortable during a test situation, because when the brain is under stress or under threat, there's no way that logical thinking can take place, right? So, but these things still happen. So what we can do in order to improve these situations that our students will be exposed to? And hopefully, I mean, I hope not in a very long time, we can change the way we assess our students. So basically, you told me that this was a very clear example of testing. So what is testing? A test is used to examine someone's knowledge on something to determine what that person knows or has learned, right? But now, what is assessment? Going back to what Claudia very clearly explained, right? And in other words, assessment is a systematic process of documenting and using empirical data to measure knowledge, skills, attitudes, and beliefs, right? So Claudia was talking about assessment for learning, and this is a case of assessment of learning through the tool of a test, right? So now I'm gonna give you a test, right? Juliana here says nothing positive comes out of this kind of stressful situation. Of course not. That's why, Juliana, something that I always do with my students, I allow them to have something to drink with them when they are doing a test. I allow them to listen to music, to instrumental music, or I play instrumental music just to generate a safe learning space where they feel at ease and they are not under stressed, right? But now I'm gonna put you under stress, right? And I'm gonna be testing you with a reading comprehension text, right? And then after reading the text, you will have 4 questions to answer. And I'm gonna rate your answers by assigning 2.5 score per question, right? Teachers, this is your text. The Granny Growlers wrangled in the Granchy Gag. This is a kind of reading comprehension exercise, right? Are you ready to answer the questions that come along with these texts? First question, what kind of growlers were they? Griny, fantastic, great, you got it. Question number 2, what did the growlers do? Nice, nice. They grangled. So you're halfway through getting a passing grade. Great, great, great. Question number 3, where did they do it? Where did they do it? Okay, some people say gag, in the Granchy Gag. And so that takes me to question number 4. In what kind of gag did they grangle? Granchy. Oh my God, I'm very happy that I have that you guys are so clever and you got a 10. You got an A. You got the best passing grade. But I told you that this was a reading comprehension text. So what is the question? What is the text about? A+. No, Silvina, exactly. These words do not even exist. And you pass a test, right? Yes, with flying colors, right? No. They are all invented words. It's nonsense, Anali, exactly. It's nonsense. But everybody got a passing grade, and you have no idea what the text is about. So what are we talking about when we talk about, yes, a reading comprehension exercise? Exactly, Mateo. I'm not testing your reading comprehension skill, but your knowledge of how language works. Syntax, Maria Jose, exactly. I'm checking how grammar works, how your knowledge of linguistics, Maria Isabel, exactly. We acted mechanically responding to a text, and we have no idea what the text is about. And this is what we do sometimes. This is thank you, Florencia. This is a great example to show how careful we need to be when we are designing our own tests, when we're working on assessment of learning, right? And this is what, Georgina, exactly, when students learn to copy and paste, right? So we need to start working on how to design better tests that reflects the purpose of that we are being tested, right? So in this test, was it assessment or testing? Clearly, testing. So somehow, was it formative or summative? Of course, it was done at the end of a unit, blah, blah, blah. Yes, summative, very clear, great. I like this way we are recapping. Is it reliable? Is it valid? And here, for me, these are two concepts that we need to take into account when designing tests, right? For when we are working on assessment of learning, because we are going on this way of assessment for learning, right? But the thing is that we need to still, somehow pave the way to that assessment for learning. So Graciela, it is valid, but not unreliable. And here, let me allow you to take you a little bit on the concept of what validity and reliability imply. So what is what validity says? That validity, can tell you, will tell you, will tests, right? Will tell you what a good test is for a particular situation. Whereas reliability will tell you how trustworthy a scope is on the scope will be on that test. Sorry, let me go here. And this is something based on what you said. You cannot draw valid conclusions from a test score unless you are sure that the test is reliable, right? Of course, exactly, Monica. This is not useful in our nowadays world. Things are changing very quickly, and so we need to move along with the change, right? Heraclitus says, the only thing constant is change. But yet we still keep testing the old way, the old school, right? And this is something that somebody else mentioned, that even when a test is reliable, it may not be valid, right? So even if the test is reliable, it may not be valid. Remember that reliability refers to this different, that it will, if you do it over time, right? If you see it over time with different evaluators or different examiners, yes, the result will be similar, or the marking will be similar or exactly the same. That is what reliability is. So this test is very reliable, but it's not valid. It's not valid because it was not testing, right, what it was supposed to test, which was reading comprehension exercise, right? So in this text, we have, when we talk about this, in the Greiner-Groters text, we can talk about 4 types of validity, right? 4 types of validity. Here we have content validity, criterion-related validity, construct validity, and phase validity, right? So what happens here? We need to come to terms with what each type of validity represents, right? And here we have like content validity. Does anyone have a thought on what content validity is or implies? Aha, it measures what it's supposed to measure. Okay, so basically, is the test fully representative of what it aims to measure? Excellent contribution. Thank you very much. Perhaps related to exactly. So we need to see that the content we are assessing reflects what we want to measure. In this case, yeah, the comprehension per se disappear. Criteria-related validity. Do the results accurately measure the concrete outcome they are designed to measure? What about construct validity, sorry? Does the test measure the concept that is intended to measure? And the last one, phase validity, which is the least, I mean, it's not a very strong, I would not, a very strong tool, I would say, to consider, but it's, does the content of the test appear to be suitable to its aim? Face value, right? At first sight, so that does it assess, are the questions like relevant and meaningful for the students? I hope these concepts open the door for questions more than having the answers, right? So, but I think that it's very important that we need to, that we consider these examples. For example, in a reading comprehension text, right, or tests, as the one, we need to take into account for content validity that it covers every aspect of a reading comprehension exercise. Are we testing vocabulary? Are we checking for main ideas? Are we going for gists? Are we going for details? Do we have any inference-making opportunities? So we need to give the students the possibility to connect with the text, not to have this question of copy-paste, copy-paste. How many times has it happened to you, teachers, right? That you say, teacher, I can't find the answer in the text. Because they are used to copying and pasting. And when you invite them to infer meaning, they don't know how to do it, right? So, Jessica, you're just bringing out the topic of GPT chat. And you know that GPT and AI, artificial intelligence, is here to stay, right? So the point is that how can we use ChatGPT with in benefits of our students' learning experience? So see, ChatGPT is something developed by Elon Musk, right? And it's it's causing a revolution online, because it's an instant conversation that you have with a bot, with a robot, that will give you, I don't know, anything you ask the bot to do. dangerous? Yes, it is. But if if addressed thoughtfully, right? So Microsoft now, Sylvia, yes, Microsoft now is using it, and now Google has launched Bard. Is like exactly, Silvana, thank you very much. Bard is like the competitor to ChatGPT, open, yes. Canva is a tool. Canva is a tool that you can use, right, to work on artificial intelligence. But I don't want to divert too much from the content, because ChatGPT opens the door for to be discussing this forever. But the important is that how we can use intelligence, yes, it's Caio is a kind of Pandora box, totally. How we can use ChatGPT to help the students' learning process. Yes, Lorena, Canva uses artificial intelligence, but it's not a tool per se, because with Canva you can do so many more things, right? Yeah, people say AI will replace teachers. No, it will never replace teachers, but it will definitely replace teachers who do not start using, right, artificial intelligence, right? It's open AI. So I don't know, Vicky, if you can access that and you can copy the link for the participants, right? I think it's very important that they get to know what I'm talking about here. So guys, having said this, right, yeah, I'm going to give you this example right here. Suppose a language school develops like a TOEFL-like test to assess the English language proficiency of their students. The school administration creates the test without considering validity and reliability. And they do not undertake any systematic process to establish the validity and reliability of that particular test. The test is administered to the students without any further validation procedures. So what's going to happen here? In these exams, right, what happens? That lacks, the test lacks validity and reliability assessments. There is no evidence, teachers, there is no evidence whatsoever to support that the test accurately measures the English language proficiency of the students, which is construct validity, or that it produces consistent and dependable results, reliability. Remember what we mentioned before. The content of the test might not cover all relevant aspects of the English language skills, content validity, and there are no external criteria or gold standards used to compare the test scores, and that has to do with criterion-related validity. So in this case, right, without validity and reliability consideration, the test results may not provide an accurate representation of the student's English language proficiency. This can lead to misinterpretations, unreliable placement decisions, and ineffective evaluation of language skills. So we need to reconsider the way we design tests when we are following this line of assessment of learning. Okay, so now I'm going to give you just a kind of a brain break with the tests, right? And this test is going to be for you to do exactly what the video tells you to do. So let's see how good you are at following instructions.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
It's very easy to miss something we are not looking for. It's very easy to miss something we are not looking for. And this is, oh, wait a minute, I need to go here to question and answer chat. I need to go to the chat again here. What's this? Okay. Let me hear. Yes. So here, yes, it's just to show you that when we are focusing on something, right? The question, how many passes did the white team make? You were focusing, all your attention was focused on that, and you missed important information. You didn't see the moon walking bear. And what happened when, Alan, you didn't see the 13 passes. How many did you count? Or were you focusing on something different? Okay, well, that was interesting to see. Just a few. Okay, but then you will have access to the video as well, to the material I'm sharing with you, so you can do it again. But this is to show you that we need to be very consistent in the kind of questions that we use in our test to test our students' understanding of a text or something. So, what is my invitation here? Let's go VRIPE. Let's go VRIPE. And this acronym stands for validity. What do you think the R stands for? No, Susanna, the bear was there all the time. The video is the same. The video is exactly the same. Just then you can watch it again, right? And the moon walking bear was there, but you were not paying attention to that. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Do you have your cell phones with you right now? Great. Can I ask you a question? If you have your cell phones there? Great. How many direct accesses to apps do you have there on your screen? How many access do you have? How many apps do you have? Fantastic. A few, blah 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 blah. Do you have the clock there? You have the time? Okay, what time is it? Without watching. In order to tell me the time, you had to look at the phone again, because I have my clock here, but when I looked at the screen, I was counting the apps. I was not checking the time. And even if it's there, yes, in big numbers, you did not see, because you were not looking for that information. You were looking for something else. And this is what we need to take into account when we design tests. So I'm trying to make it as clear as possible on the importance of designing tests that, address the thing that we need to measure. Okay, sometimes I want to take the time, then I don't remember. Yeah, it happens too. So validity, let's go VRAP, validity. Then you mentioned, reliability. But let's recap, because I'm just finishing. Validity, does it test what it is supposed to test? Reliability, somebody else says, does it do it consistently? Next, authenticity. This is something neither Claudia nor I have mentioned, but it's very important. The authenticity of the texts, right? We know that it's not authentic material, but somehow does the test mirror as far as possible tasks that could be expected in real life? And this is when we start thinking about not authentic material, but authentic tasks to address students' authentic needs, right? So we have validity, reliability, authenticity, impact. And what do we mean by impact? The impact the test will have. So this impact should be positive. Yes, we don't want to create negative backwash of people practicing for doing a test rather than actually learning the language, right? And the last one, practicality. Yes, thank you, Mariano. Thank you, Mariano. P for practicality. Is it easy to deliver? Is it easy to deliver? And this takes me to a question that many of us may have in mind. Do we teach what we are going to test? Or do we test what we have thought, what we have taught? Let me go back to this. Do we teach what we are going to test, or do we test what we have taught? Interesting question to bear in mind when designing tests on this idea of assessment of learning, right? Because we may fall into this idea that we usually test what we have taught, and that's the way that students, will learn the language. So as to connect to with Claudia's presentation, I'm going to close with 3 tips on assessment. Let's use, teachers, only assessment procedures and instruments that have been demonstrated to be valid, right, for the specific purpose for which they are being used, right? Second, let's use only reliable assessment instruments and procedures. In other words, let's use only assessment tools that provide dependable and consistent information. And my last tip, let's use assessment tools that are appropriate for the target population, right? I think I just wanted to give you an insight of my ideas. I am not an expert on assessment. I'm just a teacher, a regular teacher who wanted to share my views on what we do in class or what we do regarding assessment and testing. So I'm going to close this with a very short clip to give you some food for thought about this idea of assessment and testing.
SATs and the regime of extreme pressure testing are giving young children nightmares and leaving them in floods of tears. Teachers are reporting instances of sleeplessness and anxiety and depression even in primary school children during these exam periods. These excessive exams are not driving up standards, but they're driving up stress, both for children and for teachers. And when the system forces teachers to teach the test, narrowing down the range of learning to core parts of core subjects to get through exams, that's not actually helping pupils. We need to prepare children for life, not just for exams.
And I think this is the final thought for me here. We need to prepare students for life, not for exams. But if we work on assessment for learning, we will definitely be preparing our students for life. I'm going to stop sharing now my ideas here, my presentation, right? And I hope this casts some lights on this idea of assessment and testing.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. And we're unfortunately we're a little over time for questions now, but just a few little things to finish up. I think first of all, you know, both of you are expert teacher trainers, and I think if you really want a practical look at something as technical as assessment, speak to a teacher. People who specialize in assessment, where you saw the presentation from one of our politicians at the end, Jeremy Corbyn, and it's interesting to note that just this week there was a reading test for 11-year-olds, which left many children unable to finish and in tears. Now, what's interesting is when they finally released the test, I couldn't do it. There was several of the questions I just simply didn't know what they were asking for, and I couldn't. I just chose it was A, B, C, D, so I just chose something. And so again, how we design things and how we look at how we're testing and feeding back to our students, these are all things that we really need to reflect on. Today's been incredibly interesting for me. There's some great questions. I mean, one of the ones I think was I just like everybody maybe to think about, and then you can all come onto our Facebook page or onto Teaching Touch and share your ideas, is, you know, how do you give quality feedback to students when you have so many students? You know, I used to be a full-time English teacher, and so, you know, in a normal day it would be common for me to see 70 to 100 students over the course of a day. And how can I try and give them all feedback? Well, actually what I used to try and do, I used to have a seating map for every class and have their names on it, and I would tick it once with a green pen once I'd made sure I'd gone round them all in a class, to make sure I'd given at least one piece of feedback to each student during the class. I mean, it's a really, really simple thing, but trying to control the way that you feedback is very important. We haven't got time for questions. What I do have time to do is to say a big thank you to Claudia And a big thank you to Gustavo for those wonderful presentations, for your wonderful input. I am absolutely sure that we will be working with you again in the future. We have our ELT week coming up at the end of, well, it's going to be February next year, March next year, I think, beginning. But we've got some more sessions coming. There's plenty of more things coming. I'm just so delighted. And this is, again, this is a sign of the quality of our speakers and our presentation, that we started off the day with around 360 participants, and we've got 359 at the end.
Wow.
Okay. Now that's wonderful, because that says to everyone who's listened to us today that you've stayed with us, you've taken part, you've participated. If you want to see about future meetings, keep looking on our Facebook pages. Keep following the Teaching Touch on Instagram. They're putting all of our stuff out there. I'm absolutely delighted that you've all joined us today. There's been people from all different parts of Argentina, places I visited and loved, and places I want to go back to. Apart from Pergamino to Maria Eugenia, that was not a very good bus journey. Pergamino's fine. It was the bus journey to get there. I remember coming back in the evening and I woke up, I thought I was home, but I was in San Antonio de Areco. So it was a long way. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy, and we will see you with our next event. Thanks so much. Good night.